Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so we're going to kick off now. Got it? You're cool? Get Daryl, we're ready? Yeah.
Rory's going to be
It's not going to let me. My subscription that I use for this thing doesn't support it. Came up with a default which I realised it's better to be in Australia, so I changed it, and now I can't remember what the default came up.
Okay, welcome to the Global Azure Bootcamp Auckland 2018, and we have got an awesome crowd. We have at least 8 times the number of people that came last year, and it's actually incredible to see we've got 2 full rooms, that enough of you are that interested in Azure that you're prepared to give up your Saturdays and come and share all this Azure goodness with us. So my name's Rory. I'm a Microsoft Identity Architect. I do Azure AD and ADFS and all those kind of whizzy things. And I'm kicking off the dev track. So we're going to be talking about Azure AD. So these are the latest stats for Azure. The Azure AD, so 12.8 million organizations. It's growing 30% year on year. 950 million users, 45% year on year. Third-party apps, almost 300,000, and that's growing 200% year by year. And in terms of EMS customers, EMS is Enterprise Management System. So that's a kind of a corporate thing that includes Azure AD Premium. It includes Intune, which is basically mobile device provisioning, and device remote access, remote management. So that basically is rights management and things like that to protect your corporate documents and things like that. And 90% of Fortune 500 companies use Azure AD. Okay, it comes in a number of editions. There's a free edition, which most of you are going to be using today. That basically just lets you authenticate with Azure AD. Microsoft has said that the pure authentication is always going to be free, so you're never ever going to have to pay for it. Then you go one step up to basic. That gives you role-based access management, so that's essentially groups and groups management and assigning users to groups and protecting applications because you have to belong to a certain group. SSPR is self-service password reset. So what that does is it lets your users reset your password so they don't bug your help desk. Estimate is about $50 per call, so that saves your help desk a ton of money. And branding, so you can have your logon pages looking very much like your corporate web pages. And if you use ADFS, they've also introduced that same branding, so you can have the same branding right across all your logins. Then you go to Premium P1. That gives you multi-factor. You can do that on a phone. You can do it with a device. There's a thing coming out called FIDO2, which allows you basically to have a little key, which is password-less authentication, so you don't need a password anymore. That's coming to Azure AD sometime this year, I think end of this year. Conditional Access. Conditional Access is the fastest growing Azure AD feature. People are just climbing into it. Basically lets you have a whole lot of rules around who can access things, and we'll go into that a bit later. And things like Connect Health, which monitors your Azure AD, monitors how your cloud stuff is going, and gives you a whole lot of reports. Then for the real big users, you get Premium P2. That gives you identity protection. So identity protection is essentially machine learning for your organization. So it monitors your logins. It sees who's logging in. It looks for spurious logins. It looks for people that are logging in 100 times in an hour. It looks at someone who's logging in from New Zealand and then 10 minutes later from New York, and gives you a whole lot of reports. It is proactive, so you can set it up when you get people doing those kind of logins across the world to immediately disable those accounts. So it does a whole lot of security stuff for you. And PIM is Privileged Identity Management, and that is essentially the ability for you to manage your admins. So over time, people move around, people go across departments. What happens then? They've got rights that they shouldn't have. So PIM basically gives people a report These are the people who've got admin access. It sends an email saying, you've got this admin access. Why? Do you still need it? And if you can't, you lose it. If you're only doing admin on a Monday morning, it'll allow you to do admin on a Monday morning and you're locked out for the rest of the week. So that's pretty powerful for that point of view. And then there's a special one that you get with Office 365 when you buy an Office 365 subscription. And that's kind of a combination of basic and P1. Okay, so just some of the other things with premium. MIM is essentially BizTalk for identity, so it'll copy your credentials around different databases. It'll copy your passwords when it's changed. Root security monitoring. Cloud App Discovery at the bottom is something you install on all your users' PCs, and it basically reports which cloud apps you're using. And they can see how many people are using Salesforce, how many people are using ServiceNow, and they can adjust their licenses and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a really high-level view of what's behind Azure. I'm not going to do much code because there's tons and tons of code in the labs. Okay, so the protocols that Azure AD uses, and in fact the protocols that any identity provider on the planet uses. We start with WS Federation, so that is Microsoft's original protocol. That is the protocol that SharePoint uses, that CRM Dynamics use. Office 365 used that in the beginning. Of course, Microsoft introduced that in the days when Microsoft was the evil empire. Of course, no one wanted it, so everyone went to SAML. So SAML is the open source one, that's the Java one. That's the one that Shibboleth uses, which is used by all the academic institutions around the world. And that's kind of, they do the same thing, but the advantage for people for SAML is it's not Microsoft. And then we came to the mobile world. We wanted a lightweight protocol. We also wanted a way for people to give permission. So OAuth is the protocol that on Facebook, you say, do you give this application permission to access your friends? That's OAuth, right? It is not an authentication protocol, it's an authorization protocol. So what happened is everyone in the world said, no, we actually want to use this for authentication. So Google wrote their stack, Twitter wrote their stack, Facebook wrote their stack. Every stack was different, and it became a complete nightmare. So they all sat down and they decided, let's get OpenID Connect. OpenID Connect is an OAuth standard for how you authenticate. Okay, and if you use that, then you've got standardization across everything. Now, in the Microsoft world, they use this term modern authentication, and that's the kind of way that Office 365 and all those things work now. That's using OpenID Connect and OAuth. So Microsoft is moving away over time from WS Federation. They never really did much in the SAML world. In fact, there's not a SAML stack client side that Microsoft developed. The Microsoft world is going OpenID Connect and OAuth. Okay, so if you go into the endpoints, and can look at them later, what you do is you get this Federation meta document, and that describes everything that you need to know about Azure AD. It's got the public certificates, it's got the endpoints, it's got the claims that it supports, basically anything you need to know. It's this huge XML document, which is the metadata. If you're using W Federation, you can use that as your sign-on. SAML's got a sign-on and a sign-out. If you're using Microsoft Graph or Azure AD Graph, it's got that particular one for your tenant. And then OAuth has got two endpoints. It's got an authorized endpoint where you basically go and you authorize, and it's got a token endpoint that gives you the access token that you need to go and access your APIs. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this in great detail. That's what WS Federation looks like. You can see it's got WT Realm and W Trust and W Context and things. That's what SAML looks like. It's all base 64 encoded. There's a lot of tools out there that decode it for you. WS Federation and SAML give you a SAML token. It's all in XML. It's this big XML document. It's really quite hard to read. What Microsoft calls claims, SAML calls attributes. So you can see this guy belongs to the ES department. And that's what OAuth 2 looks like. So OAuth 2, and what you get back from OAuth is you get a JSON web token, and that's pretty much it. It's encoded. Again, there's a lot of tools that will decode it for you, and you can see the attributes down on the bottom. Okay, so the way that typically you're going to use this, and the way that all the labs that you're going to look at use, is you basically authenticate, and you go to the authorized endpoint. Azure AD is going to give you a token. You're going to put that token in your authorized header. You're going to send it to your API, and then Microsoft will give you access to that API. And that's the work, pretty much the workflow of just about every one of the labs that you're going to do later. Auth and OpenID Connect give you 3 tokens. They give you an access token, so that's the token you use to get to your APIs. OpenID Connect introduced the concept of an ID token. The idea of the ID token is it's user-centric, so it gives you some information about the user, who you are, your first name, your last name, your email, your UPN, things like that. Access token doesn't give you those kind of things, so it gives you some idea of who's actually who you are as the person who's authenticating. And it gives you a refresh token. The idea of the refresh token is that the access token is only valid for an hour. So after an hour of your user working, what happens then is your user gets a logon screen. So that pretty much sucks as a user experience. So behind the scenes, all the Azure stacks, when it's getting close to you getting logged out, they will send a refresh token, and in return, Azure AD will give you a new access token. So behind the scenes, you can continually refresh your access tokens without your user having to log on. So it's a much cleaner, much nicer user experience. And you can see it's got the same custodians, it's got the issuer, when it was issued at, when it expires, email address, UPN, things like that. So all contained in that ID token. Okay, there's a number of ways to debug these tokens, and we'll go and look at them just now. So there's a company called Auth0. I don't know if any of you have heard of Auth0. They are a software as a service identity company. They do some awesome work. They've got a thing at jwt.io. That's where I got that slide about debugging the token. Microsoft has done the same thing with jwt.ms. Again, that's a way of debugging your tokens and having a look at what's in them. Auth0 have got a thing called samltool.io. What that does is decodes that SAML that you saw that was all in base 64 encoded. And then there's if you live in the ADFS world, if you live in the on-premise world, there's a tool called ADFS Help, which also debugs SAML tokens and JSON tokens. Okay, so what are the typical use cases for people who access applications and web APIs in Azure and need authentication? So you've got and it accesses a web application. They're all non-browser-based apps. So mobile, WPF, if you still use WPF, console, program, basic stuff like that. And server apps is server to server. So that's 2 servers talking to each other. There's an OAuth flow called client credentials, which basically enables you to pass a secret key across. So there's no logon there because it's server to server, so there's no logon page. So if you know the secret key, you can call the API. Now, if we take that and we put the protocols that I showed you earlier on top of it, you get that. Okay. So you can see that unless you're a big enterprise and you're calling web applications, calling things like Salesforce, ServiceNow, that's where you're doing the WSFed and the SAML. Pretty much everything else these days, as you can see from that slide, is OAuth and OpenID Connect. So it's kind of eating the world almost. It's just the big corporates and the big conglomerates at the moment that are using WS Federation and SAML. Okay, Graph Explorer is a way that you can go and have a look at, and I will go and show you that if my internet is still working. So this is Graph Explorer. I have got a page I'll show you just now. It's got all these links on, so you don't have to worry about it. So this enables you to go and get all kinds of attributes from Azure AD. If you click down here, show more samples, you can go and add all of these by turning them on and off to this tool. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to flood it. So if I want to go and see my mail, you can see it's messages, and there is a whole lot of mail stuff about me. My profile, you can see my name. So this, I haven't signed in, this is just the default session. Yeah.
Forgive me for not knowing, what's Graph compared to Graph anything else?
Okay, so if you know AD, okay, the on-premises AD that you all know and love. It's very hierarchical. It's very organization centric, and to access it you use LDAP. So there's a whole lot of LDAP queries. In the cloud, that corporate, very hierarchical structure doesn't work, because your brother could be playing rugby with your friend's cousin, right? So that kind of relationship doesn't work in that kind of hierarchical thing. So what Facebook and what Azure AD do is they use a graph structure. So it's basically a whole lot of nodes that can be interconnected in many, many different ways. It's not hierarchical at all. And because, in the old way you used LDAP, in the new way you use a protocol called the Graph API. So it's a way of accessing Azure AD. There's two halves to it. There's the Azure AD Graph API, which basically gives you information about Azure AD. So those things like my profile, my manager, my colleagues. And there's another whole side, which is the Microsoft Graph API, which is Office 365 centric. So that's my documents, my mail, all that kind of stuff. But they all use Graph.
So it means the Azure AD does not use the LDAP protocol?
No. The question is, does Azure AD use LDAP? No. You cannot use LDAP on Azure AD. It only works on corporate AD. So the name Azure AD I've always disliked, because it kind of gives you the sense that it's AD in the cloud. It's not AD in the cloud. It's completely different, but it does the same kind of things. It allows you to authenticate, and it gives you all your attributes. Okay, so that's Graph Explorer. Okay, so the Access Panel, I can show you that. The problem, right, is that you have got 40 software as a service apps, you've got 60 on-premise, maybe you do Twitter, you do Facebook, you do God knows what else. How do you control what your users can see? And so what Microsoft did is they introduced the Access Panel. And what the Access Panel does is it's kind of like a portal to the apps that you are allowed to use, and it works on groups and all kinds of things like that. So if we go and look at the Access Panel, we will see, hopefully, if it's still working. Where is it? Here we are. So this is my corporate one. So you can see I've got Azure, I've got calendars. What you can do with this is, and this is going to be different per person because it depends on what groups you're in. It depends on where you fit into the organization. What you can do at the top on the right, there's a whole workflow. So if you see your mate's got access to Planner and you think you should have access to Planner, you can go and say, I would like access to that group. And then it goes to an admin. The admin says a request. The admin says, yes, I grant that. And then from then on, your panel will have a planner on it. So it's a way of giving you an easy into all your applications, but at the same time, it's okay, conditional access. Like I said, this is the fastest growing feature in Azure AD. So you can lock down access by users and groups. So you can say these users can access these applications, or I'm going to go wider and do it on a group. You can decide who can access which cloud application. It uses that machine learning I spoke on earlier to work out the risk of your sign-on. Are you signing in once a day and it's looking good, or are you signing in from Uzbekistan or somewhere that's a really kind of dodgy country maybe for hackers, all that kind of thing, and it works out your risk, and you can decide, I'm a corporate, if there's any sign of risk at all, you can't sign in, okay? You can sign in by device platform, so you can say, I'm not going to allow iPhones, I'm only going to allow Android, and it has to be this version of the Android software, and it has to have this level of fixes. But if you don't have that, you cannot use your mobile. That's all managed by Intune, but the access is managed by Azure AD. You can do it by location, so you can say, obviously, anyone in New Zealand and maybe someone in Sydney. You can do access to your client applications, and there's a what if feature that basically lets you try out when you set a policy, how is this going to affect me? So having seen some companies that have started implementing it, I would strongly advise you to not have 50 really complicated policies, because it's just going to really confuse you. Start simple, 1 or 2 policies, have a little working group of 10 people maybe, get them all working properly, and then roll it out in stages. It's really important to do the comms when you roll it out, otherwise your help desk will be horribly overloaded, because suddenly people that had access to all these things will no longer have access. So if you don't do it properly, you're going to have an overloaded help desk and some pissed off customers. All right. Okay, if you want to look at things you can do with Azure available, what Internet of Things is available, a whole lot of stuff like that. You can search for, so if you're interested in a good old New Zealand company, it gives you all the stuff that's related to Xero. So there's tons of this stuff, and you know, as I showed you, it's growing by 300% year on year. Okay. All right, so around the protocols, and you'll see these words. So I'm trying to give you a sense of all the buzzwords. So when you look at the labs, it'll hopefully make some sense. So Owen, that is a way of allowing a whole lot of different things to be grouped together. So you can use 2 different stacks, or you can use 2 different protocols or things like that. So Owen is the way that OpenID Connect and Auth work. Then we had WIF, which is the client side for Windows WS Federation. And then for native devices, so those are your mobiles and things, there's a library called ADAL, Active Directory Authentication Library, and that's been slowly phased out for a new library called MSAL, Microsoft Authentication Library. And for pretty much all the labs, it uses those libraries if you are not going to do something that's browser-based, if you're going to do something that's native. Okay, so those are not protocols specifically, they're kind of the wrapper around it that allows access and controls the way you use it. So that's the mission statement for ADAL. Take advantage for client applications to access protected resources. It's on a ton of platforms. There's iOS versions, there's JavaScript, there's Node, there's Java. They even have a Windows Phone if you do Windows Phone development. Probably no one here. It does caching and automatic refresh token, that stuff I spoke about earlier, where every hour it's going to get you a new token, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't even have to know that it happens. It's doing it all for you. It uses asynchronous stuff. It's the basis of the Graph API and the management library. And it is open source, so if you want to go and see how ADAL does something, you can go and look on GitHub. Okay, so what does the code look like for ADAL? Well, it's literally typically something like those 5 lines. So you get a client ID, which is some GUID, it's an Azure AD. You get the authority, which is you, the place where you want to go to, so some test service at Azure. You use authentication context, and then it'll give you a result based on getting a token. So basically that's it. All right, and when you call authentication context, that's when it's going to pop up a login screen for you and ask you to authenticate. And that's pretty much it. So you just need those 5 lines. All the refresh tokens, all the caching, all that kind of stuff is all built in, and it takes care of all of that for you. All right, the other thing you can use is Azure as an identity provider in its own right. So it can federate with things like Salesforce and ServiceNow. You can, if you want to use Azure for an application that you've developed, there's a way of doing it in a custom app, and we'll go and look at that. You can do the Exes Panel stuff, and if you use a tool called AD Connect, that syncs up your corporate AD into Azure AD. And the advantage of that is if someone leaves your company, it automatically takes them out of Azure, so they can't use your online facilities. If someone joins, they automatically get provisioned. And that allows you to get single sign-on with ADFS between your on-premise users that are using Windows Integrated Auth, so they don't log in, just like when you go to work every day. And you get that same SSO across all of the software as a service applications. Okay, in Visual Studio, if you want to go and set this up, you just find that little button there, change authentication. You click that, you click organizational accounts. You set up your Azure tenant, so that's the tenant that you all just signed up to if you used one of these little cards, the name of whatever tenant you chose on Microsoft.com, and then you just set it up for SSO. And if you do that inside Visual Studio, it will automatically go and do all the whizziness for you. Written by Dominic Bauer and Brock Allen. We're both very clued up guys and both MVPs. And now, of course, you're getting the standard OpenID Connect stuff. And in .NET Core, it actually sets you up with Azure AD B2C. So they keep changing what's behind it as you move along the path of Visual Studios. All right, so I've got about 5 minutes. I'm just going to whiz around Azure really quickly. I just need this one. Okay, so you go down here, Azure Active Directory.
Are we following you?
No, I'm just going to show you now. You don't have to do anything. I'm just going to explain the stuff very, very quickly. So users, well, that's self-explanatory. That's where you add your users. Groups, that's where you add the users to groups. Enterprise applications, okay, so if we go there, and we go new application, so you can see there 2,938 of them at the moment. Every week it goes up, and you can select a whole lot of stuff here. You select it, and it comes with a whole lot of instructions about how you integrate that application. So go buy a license and then integrate it. If you've got an application, some SAML application that's not in the list, you go over here, non-gallery applications. You click that, and it'll take you to a screen where you have to enter all the SAML. So you kind of, okay, now you're on your own a little bit. You've got to figure it out, but it allows you to have a SAML application that will use Azure AD. Okay. All right, devices are obviously you manage devices. App registrations is where you set up your application in Azure AD. That is basically the only one that you're going to be using when you do the labs. You're not going to be using any of the other stuff. Application proxy is there's an Azure AD proxy that you can use to put in front of it that can do all kinds of whizzy stuff. Licenses, obviously. Azure AD Connect is where you set up the Azure AD Connect to sync your on-premise AD up to Azure. Custom domain names, as you saw when you got your tenant, it is something.onmicrosoft.com. If you're a company that kind of sucks, you want to have, your company name, and so you can go and get a custom domain. You buy a certificate, you get the certificate for whatever name you want, and then you go through that flow to make sure that your Azure account, your Azure AD account is now front-ended. So it's still on Microsoft.com at the back, but in the front it's whatever name you wanted. You can do the management, password reset, company branding. You can decide what you as an admin, what settings you want. And then you can set up conditional access. MFA Server is an on-premise one that you can download. It was originally written by a company called Phone Factor, and basically gives you on-premise MFA. This is where you do all those risky signs-ons and things. And there's a whole ton of reporting that you can get. The higher the level of your license, the more reports you get, and the more detailed they are, and the greater value you get out of them. Okay, so that was a really, really quick tour, and I apologize if I rushed it, but we're kind of trying to just do half an hour of this and then an hour of labs, because the feedback we've got before is people don't get enough time for the labs. So we're going to try a bit of a longer lab session this time. Okay, so if you just whip onto your favorite browser and Google RBraby Gist, and then you'll see a thing called GAB-MD. So you should find this document because it's got all the links in it. So rather than you having to hurt your eyes trying to copy it down, it's all there for you. Has everyone got that page up?
What do you mean by the gift?
The one that's called gab.md. You Google RBraby. Has everyone got that page? I could have given you the link right at the top, but then you would have got pissed off trying to type it out. So I figured it was easy just to say Google it. Well, yeah. Go and talk to GitHub. Okay, so everyone got that document? So anyone who doesn't have the document? Okay, David.
Went straight to Jason. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, just go back. Albert, just go back. And then click it. All right, cool. Has anyone else not got it? Okay. Bear with us. No, just go to Google. Just Google, just Google features. You know, in your search bar.
People are using there, click on the get in the search bar. Click on the actual markup for it. Get Indeed, people put out clicking that, they're just going to the top level.
Oh, they're not clicking this thing?
Yeah, so
Okay, anyone else?
They're probably just getting the top level, which doesn't have anything.
Daryl's going to do the rest. He's taking over.
Now I'll run for the door.
We are good?
Yeah. Plus and minus to zoom in and out.
Okay. Okay, so down here, Azure Active Directory Code Samples. Click on that link. And you have a whole long list of labs that you can do. So you can do web browser, you can do SPA, you can do native. So native is your kind of mobile. You can do web application with web API. You can do server or daemon. A whole lot of stuff. This one here right at the top is probably the easiest one. I don't know what's going to work if everyone tries to download them at the same time. They're not very big though. Okay, so if you click on this one, if you've got GitHub and all those kind of whizzies things, you can open it if you've got GitHub Desktop. If you've got Visual Studio, or else just download the zip file and just chuck it into Visual Studio. So there's a whole choice. I've tried a few of them just to check that they still work. They all still work for me. I didn't try all of them. So, yeah, we're going for 55 minutes. So pick one and have a crack at it. And just stick your hand up if you get stuck.
Have you tried that Azure Graph one?
Have I tried it? How do you mean?
It was like,
Oh, I haven't tried all of them. No, I haven't tried that one.
I might learn some.
So in that gist file that I put up there, those links, all the links that were in the slides are here. And if you look down to the bottom, there's a whole lot of other Azure stuff that I've put in. There's books and there's courses and infographics and all kinds of things. So have a look at that. I'm going to leave this up. I'm not going to take it down, so you can look at it next month or whatever. Go for it.
Awesome resource.
So, yeah, there's a ton of Azure stuff in it, and just go mad and go and play. There's some really cool infographics towards the bottom that show you the whole of Azure. This one is quite a neat one. So this one basically shows you the whole of Azure, and you can go and click in whatever interests you, and it shows you documentation, and it shows you instructions and all kinds of things. This is a really awesome one. I really like this. It's pretty much the whole of Azure. If you want to know where I got it from, it is this link down here, Azure Infographics. No, sorry, not that one. This one here, Azure 101, is that one that was on the screen. So it's a really, really useful resource, not just for Azure AD, but for the whole, everything you ever wanted to know about Azure.
That will be on the YouTube channel. Oh, okay.
Connecting to this VM, we're using the username and password that we set